One of the biggest and most anticipated games of 2020, Halo Infinite, gets a shocking announcement yesterday that the online multiplayer will be free on the Xbox Series X, along with some additional details. I basically want to talk about how I feel about this, what it means for the game, and some potential concerns I have. And finally, a major discovery regarding the next generation of Nintendo Switch consoles, or the Switch Pro, has potentially been discovered, and would be huge for Nintendo if this is actually the case. What's going on, guys? I'm RGT85. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And no, I'm not Eddie Kingston. I did not get signed to AEW, but I appreciate all the tags. I guess we kind of do look similar. Now, without any further ado, let's talk about what's going on in the world of video games. So Halo Infinite is arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, games of 2020. Halo fans have long been awaiting the next game in the Halo franchise, and I am one of those people. I enjoy the multiplayer of the Halo games. I never really got into the single player stuff, but the multiplayer was always very addicting for me. It was a very fun experience, and it's just legendary stuff. So many of us have very fond memories of games like Halo 2 at LAN parties and stuff like that. Just absolutely fantastic times. Now, of course, during the last Xbox Series X presentation, we were introduced to Halo Infinite, and well, the reaction was definitely a bit mixed. I thought the game looked fine, but that was kind of one of the problems. It didn't really look like a next generation game. It looked pretty much like a game you would expect to see on the Xbox One or the PS4. There wasn't really that huge generational jump that a lot of people were hoping for, and really it looked very solid, but maybe a bit lacking in terms of the visual aspect. Now, the gameplay itself did look fantastic, of course. You know, everything ran smoothly and everything looked like a lot of fun, but there definitely was some holdback when it comes to the raw graphics of the game. But really though, the graphics didn't bother me all that much. The bigger problem I had was with 343 coming out and essentially saying that this is going to be the last Halo game for a long time, because they're going to consistently support this game and give it updates, which in theory is a cool thing, but it seems like they want this thing to last over 10 years. And when you start to talk about sequels to games, I actually like sequels, because I feel like sequels allow you to do different things. You can't really go in and change the source code of Halo Infinite. You can't do things like improve the visuals and whatnot. You're pretty much stuck with the same base game as it is. Of course, there's been lots of rumors about Halo Infinite potentially have development problems, and there was the whole multiplayer thing. Was the game going to launch without multiplayer or anything like that? Was a rumor that was floating around that was quickly shot down. But yesterday, like I said, we got a major announcement for Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite on the Xbox Series X, the multiplayer component of the game, is going to be free to play, meaning that you don't have to buy anything. You could simply play Halo Infinite on your Xbox Series X, the multiplayer aspect. Of course, the game is also being confirmed as running at 120 frames per second on the Xbox Series X. And I guess that does make sense when you look at the visual style of the game, because the visual style isn't really all that demanding, but they seem to be going more so with performance with Halo Infinite instead of just trying to make things look very nice and fancy. And at first, Halo Infinite being free to play for the multiplayer aspect is very pro-consumer, but the more I thought about it, the more concerns I just sort of had. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of games as a service, especially when it comes to major IPs like Halo. It just seems very weird and foreign to me, and I could be in the minority with that. It could just be my sort of old man mentality where I feel like major franchises should have their big releases and then that's it. You start to work on a sequel after that, instead of essentially making it a games as a service. But going free to play really sort of opens the door for some stuff that I just really don't like, because I feel like the content could essentially be lacking at the launch for this game when it comes to the multiplayer aspect. And then 343 could simply say, well, it's free to play. We are going to be adding in more stuff, sort of similar to the original Splatoon game that Nintendo released on the Wii U. Like, that game was severely lacking in content when it first launched, and of course over time it got better, but still Splatoon 2 launched with a heck of a lot more content than Splatoon 1 did. And I almost feel like this is a step backwards for the Halo franchise, because it's never really been about that. It's about getting the game on day one, enjoying what is in there, and then hoping for subsequent DLC packs. Of course, since this is going to be free to play on the Xbox Series X, you also have to wonder about microtransactions, and I feel like there's going to be so many cosmetic microtransactions in this game, which cosmetic microtransactions don't bother me, because it's sort of a thing where if you want it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. I don't really get into microtransactions when it comes to cosmetic stuff, but I do feel like it'll sort of get rid of the unlockable stuff that you could get for your Spartan characters and sort of make them customizable to the way you like them, instead going for a pay-to-play route when it comes to these downloads as far as microtransactions are concerned. Plus, they really could do more microtransactions with it. It really remains to be seen. And I get it, on paper, when you think about it, when you pick up your Xbox Series X, you could download the multiplayer component of Halo Infinite for absolutely free. But it's just sort of weird to me because it feels like Microsoft is holding back a bit with this console generation. Things like keeping the Xbox One around, making Halo Infinite free to play from 343. It's just kind of weird. It's definitely a different direction for them and a different sort of philosophy in gaming. I'm not going to say it's going to work. I'm not going to say it's not going to work. How many people will actually buy Halo Infinite just to play the story mode of it when you could get the multiplayer for free? I personally feel like the multiplayer aspect is the more important of the two, but I could be wrong on this. It's obviously a gamble, but I think it's a gamble that could potentially pay off. It's going to be very interesting to see the whole Xbox Series X launch though, and everything that goes around with it, because I think this is one of the most fascinating console launches that I have ever seen. But yes, Halo Infinite, if you have an Xbox Series X, you can get the multiplayer for free, and I mean, that's pretty cool, but I do have concerns. And finally, Nintendo's had a very strange 2020. It seems like maybe they forgot that they make video games. Obviously, a lot of this is due to real world circumstances. We talked about it in yesterday's video, so make sure you guys check that out after finishing up this video. But really, there hasn't been a whole heck of a lot to be excited about when it comes to Nintendo Switch stuff. But an interesting discovery was potentially made by our local LinkedIn resident, DocTray81, who finds some amazing things on LinkedIn a lot of the times that, you know, ends up being fruitful for the video game industry and ends up being a sign of what is to come in the industry. I guess that's why he's the talk of the town. Nintendo Doc Trey still holding it down. But basically, everyone knows that NVIDIA and Nintendo worked on the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch, of course, is using the NVIDIA Tegra in this system, so obviously this partnership is going to be going on in the future. Well, an interesting discovery, like I said, was made that could potentially show something for a Nintendo Switch Pro or a next generation of Nintendo Switch consoles. This listing was put on LinkedIn and it says the following. NVIDIA is essentially looking for a senior embedded software engineer for Tegra Solutions to work on next generation graphics and AI technologies for gaming consoles and AI edge devices. This individual will essentially be using solutions to use artificial intelligence and graphic technologies like NVIDIA's DLSS 2.0. Now, I know what you're saying to yourself. What the hell is DLSS 2.0 and why should I care about it? And upon first glance, that was sort of my philosophy with this story. I just didn't really care about it. But the more I looked into it, the more it just sort of made sense, and it actually made me very excited. Because essentially what that is it's image reconstruction technology. It essentially allows a console to target higher resolutions than the GPU would be capable of while keeping everything at a very low cost, which is obviously something that is in line with Nintendo's current approach to consoles with their system. They don't want the beefiest systems in the world when it comes to GPUs and CPUs. They're more concerned about price efficiency and just the performance of the things that they have in there. Now, DLSS 2.0 offers image quality comparable to the native resolution of a game while only rendering about 1/4 to 1/2 of the pixels needed. It employs new temporal feedback techniques for sharper image details and improved stability from frame to frame. What's really interesting is that, of course, Death Stranding just came out on the PC, and according to Digital Foundry, the DLSS 2.0 image reconstruction actually looks cleaner and better than the native resolution of the game, meaning that this artificial intelligence is actually improving the way the game looks without having to do any sort of hardware stuff. Now, I know what you're saying to yourself, well, you know, that sounds cool and all, but I need to see some practicality. And over on NVIDIA's website, they actually have some of the practicality of this when it comes to games like Wolfenstein Youngblood, where you can see a side-by-side comparison that I'm showing right now, where the game utilizing this DLSS 2.0 technology is running with that versus without it. And you can see there's a huge difference here in terms of graphical fidelity. And the more I thought about this, the more it makes sense for what Nintendo kind of wants to do. Of course, NVIDIA has used things like upscaling technology in the NVIDIA TV products that they have. The latest NVIDIA TV has some upscaling technology in it that makes everything look better. This would be a huge game changer for the Nintendo Switch because Nintendo wouldn't really have to worry about changing their philosophy and their design of their games. But of course, this would be able to clean up games already released on the Nintendo Switch and be able to achieve much better visual fidelity in terms of clarity and resolution without having to make a super beefy system. Of course, third-party developers could also utilize this stuff because it relies less on limiting visuals for the Nintendo Switch 2 or the Nintendo Switch Pro, whatever this system could potentially be, and it will make for a much much easier port process as well, because you don't have to worry about things like what you want your resolution to be if you have this technology that is able to make things look better for you. I really think this could potentially be the future of video games, more so than just hardware powered systems. You know, having the beefiest system in the world is a great thing, but if you are able to do things like artificial intelligence to make these games look and run better without having to rely on just raw power, this could be a huge game changer. This whole thing is designed with lower end systems in mind to make these games look better. And if you have a higher end system, you're able to utilize this technology and make things look even crazier. So the fact that Nvidia works with Nintendo, the fact that obviously sometime down the line there's going to have to be some sort of successor to the Nintendo Switch, whether it's a Nintendo Switch Pro or a Nintendo Switch 2, of course, this really bodes well for the future. I hope that Nintendo is actively seeking out this technology with Nvidia, and obviously Nvidia has made a lot of money with Nintendo thus far, so it would make sense for them to want to put this technology in a Nintendo Switch system as well. Alright, so that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know what you think of everything in the comments section down below. And as always, thank you guys for checking out this video. Like I said at the start, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out some other videos on the channel. We did a banger of a video yesterday on the channel talking about Nintendo's 2020. Check out the Arcade 1-Up NBA Jam review because, well, not a lot of people watch that one. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.